Hello, my name is Dr. Kimberly Gentry, and this is my presentation on when servant leadership flourishes within a social and cultural setting, a socio-rhetorical analysis of Daniel chapter 1. Let's get started. So, the purpose of this exegetical research study is to examine the intricacies of servant leadership within a biblical pericope of Daniel chapter 1 through the methodology of socio-rhetorical analysis using both social and cultural textures. Found inside this exegetical study, we will have three characteristics of servant leadership being studied, as well as the importance of both social and cultural texture found within the servant leadership theory of Daniel chapter 1. And future research will talk about correlations to other passages and comprehension of examples. Now, here is our outline. I'm going to talk about some background information, some research methods, results, summary, implications, and future research. Now, let's get started. So, servant leadership, according to Euclid, in 1970 was found by Robert Greenleaf. This leadership theory focuses on the act of service to help develop their followers to fulfill their desired mission aimed, and researchers exhibit numerous beneficial factors that come into play from a leader effectively incorporating the theory of servant leadership within relationships to their followers. Now, based on Murari in 2012, servant leadership takes a unique approach to leading their followers through teamwork, trust, compassion, and the principled use of authority. Through utilizing these methods of leadership, efficiency will begin to take place within each of the followers and transfer over to the organization. It is with leadership theories such as servant leadership, scholars desire to learn by examples and principles set before them, and the biblical text serves as an excellent source for them to absorb this from. Now, Hill in 2010 asserts that there is a limited level of attention to biblical hermeneutics, and therefore the biblical hermeneutics should be considered to assist as a method for understanding various pericopes. In terms of servant leadership, conducting a socio-rhetorical analysis over a biblical passage allows a Christian researcher the opportunity to study all of the textures and aspects that make up that specific pericope. Therefore, our research question for this study is based on the narrative of Daniel chapter 1. What specific new insights of vital characteristics within the theory of servant leadership can be seen in correlation to the numerous social and cultural factors that make up the passage study? Now, according to Coertzer in 2017, the theory of servant leadership functions as a multidimensional style of leadership, focusing on the follower's needs and wants. Having the desire to pay attention to the needs of others demonstrates the level needed to acquire a heart for service. Being service oriented establishes the level of understanding between both the leader and the followers, and that committing to actions designate to help one another will allow a level of overall growth that will transition to a high level of trust. Now, there are three significant characteristics that we will be looking at according to Euclid of servant leadership, and this includes having a genuine heart for service in terms of their followers, containing a specific core values that displayed throughout the relationship to their followers, and encompassing a follower-focused mindset in the decision-making methods. So let's talk about the first one, service. Service is the basis of what a servant leader is. So having the passion for incorporating the act of service as the core for building their leadership on the platform of the principle. According to Liu, one cannot exhibit a servant leadership style without implementing the act of service throughout daily tasks and duties. Through supporting and showing appreciation to their followers, this helps contribute to the service aspect instilled within the leader. Now, Murari in 2012 shared that benefits include a higher level of follower empowerment, self-efficiency, commitment to the mission and vision, and role gratification. And all of these benefits share a sense of aid to the acknowledgement of what the followers need or desire to be useful in the shared mission. Next, values. Based on Bass in 2008, a leader's values serve as an instrumental role in displaying the character behind the leader to their followers. It is by this acknowledgement of where the leader stands on their beliefs that a shared understanding can take place for the achievement of the shared mission or vision. Now, Uckel states that there are some of the servant leadership values include honesty, integrity, ambition, and trust. And through prioritizing these, followers can buy into how these values play a role within the relationship to their servant leader. Therefore, utilizing the shared values as a framework for what is expected within the connection relating to the mission. Through the installation of these values, a servant leader will be able to serve with a deeper meaning, knowing that the followers will be able to see the purpose for a greater impact. The last characteristic we're going to talk about is follower focused. Now, both the service minded and personal values come with a correlation of a follower focused mindset, because meeting the needs of one's followers is truly what servant leadership is all about. And Uckel in 2013 explains that it is through this correct understanding of what the follower needs for a servant leader to know the most effective way of serving them. And without set followers, a servant leader cannot instill their values through the service-minded heart. And Sun in 2019 demonstrates the correlation of the personality trait of nurturing embedded in a servant leader is directly tied to a follower-focused mindset. And it is through this idea of putting followers first that a servant leader will feel the empowering and nurturing taking place within their relationship. And that is where the real development comes forth. Now, let's talk about the research methods. Developing an awareness of social and cultural components that make up the biblical passage can broaden one's understanding into the context of the story, and according to Collins in 1985. Now, based on Henson in 2020, the social and cultural texture of the socio-rhetorical analysis seeks to address the setting, circumstances, civilization customs, and traditional community issues found within the context of a biblical passage. It is through the interpretation of the social and cultural factors within a passage this can help a researcher understand the intended meaning of the pericope. Now, after analyzing Daniel chapter 1, numerous social and cultural components that make up the meaning and purpose behind the text were found. And some of these concepts include a regime change, merging of cultures, a challenge against the system, and formal trainings. Now, in Daniel 1:1, the author develops the setting for the reader to understand that society was in a form of disarray due to the fact that King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian siege besieged Judah. Therefore, a researcher can automatically sense the level of tension between both the Israelites and the Babylonians within every decision made. Now, Patterson in 1993 explains that elements such as testing the standards of faith as a basis help show the clash of social expectations. And in Table 1, we see social components inside the chapter of Daniel 1 displayed within its correlating verses and keywords. And it is through the social and cultural texture of the socio-rhetorical analysis that a researcher can see the emotions develop throughout these social understandings and clashes. And we can see that in the second row with verses 3 and 4 having the merging of cultures when the king Nebuchadnezzar brought some of the Israelites into his palace to teach him the language and the literature of the Babylonians. And by understanding social components, one can dive deeper into the cultural impact supporting the biblical passage. Cultural conditions of the story within the passage demonstrates how cultural factors of culture correlates to their social situation. Now, according to Henson in 2020, He authenticates that a cultural strata belong to the community in which represents their perceptions on the situations, and that culture texture can be broken down really into 5 cultural categories. These categories include dominant, subculture, counterculture, contraculture, and liminal culture. It is through these cultural aspects that Daniel chapter 1 comes alive into a new light. Now, in Table 2, these final cultural categories are presented with their keywords that indicate the culture factors within their character associated with that cultural grouping. One note that sparks discussion is that socio-rhetorical analysis exhibits that all of the final cultural categories are displayed except for one, contraculture, within the text. And maybe the formation of contraculture can be seen throughout the rest of the book of Daniel, but there is no account in accordance to Daniel chapter 1. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Analyzing the material from both social and cultural tables presented, there are multiple pivotal connections to this theory of servant leadership throughout Daniel chapter 1, making the literature of Daniel 1 present its meaning to the reader through correlations of social and cultural components of texture. One of these correlations can be seen within verse 8, understanding the impact. Daniel defied the social norm to stand up for what he believed in, and with this defiance, Daniel still showed grace and a servant's attitude to both King Nebuchadnezzar and God himself. For Daniel did not follow the orders precisely from what the king desired, but challenged the social standard to meet the needs from what God ordered him to do. This act of adaptation to the social norm displays that Daniel continued to have a heart of service both to God, the king, and his followers. Now, Parcham in 2012 shares that the reason that these specific young Israelites were picked is due to their ability to learn and their openness to being educated by the Babylonian culture. And this sets Daniel as a natural leader over the other Israelites his age, since he was able to defy that social norm. Leading by example was the best method for Daniel to demonstrate servant leadership across cultural barriers, because a heart of service displayed in verse 8 can be easily understood across other languages and cultures. Therefore, Daniel 1:8 can help enhance the understanding of service within the constructs of servant leadership theory. Next, Daniel 1:12 through 15. This is the conversation that gives demonstration of how Daniel successfully challenged the direction of the dominant culture to stand firm within his beliefs. Verse 15 specifically states that due to this test, Daniel ended up being abundantly healthier and more nourished than the others going through the training within the subculture of the king's court service. Therefore, this section of the pericope within Daniel 1 demonstrates how Daniel became even more qualified for his position, setting him apart from all the other Israelites of training. The theory of servant leadership employs their values as a meaning behind specific decisions to inspire, empower, and motivate their followers. By exegetically connecting the principle of servant leadership to Daniel 1:12 through 15, this can critique how a researcher views the interpretation of servant leadership throughout the sacred text. The reason being that not every value has to be known to be seen how one's leadership values can guide the decision-making process inside the mindset. Now, what implications do we have here? Daniel 1, through the lens of social and cultural texture, displays these key characteristics of servant leadership, and it both enhances and critiques the current research level on the leadership theory, because both the service intention and value minded is provided inside Daniel chapter 1. While the follower focused component is harder to exegetically be found within this chapter of the book of Daniel, this being known that an exegetical research can employ Daniel chapter 1 as an example of servant leadership, with the idea of having both service and value there. Now, future research. There are two main ideas and questions that come about for future research. Number one, what other parts of the biblical text coincide with the findings found inside this specific passage? Now, because Daniel is placed in a unique situation of being a servant leader as a follower, this gives a good idea and understanding of where can we also see being another character within the Bible, being a good servant leader as a follower. Now, another idea for future research may inspire researchers to see what other leadership styles can be found within the text of Daniel chapter 1. By conducting an exegetical analysis, various lenses may appear to help see patterns and trends of other leadership styles being used throughout Daniel's story. A couple leadership styles that may be needed to be considered includes participative, charismatic, and authoritative. All three of these, in the context of socio-rhetorical analysis, specifically within the social and cultural texture, could exhibit numerous ways of evaluating leadership styles. These are my references. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to any questions or future discussions about the topic. Thank you.